Hi, Dr. Merriweather. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. It's a
Good,
lovely
good.
day in Houston.
Nice. Yeah. We're going to be talking about poison ivy identification today. Before we get started, I wanted to kind of see if you could give me a little background on yourself for the audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I can do better than that. I actually have a slide devoted to me. So
Oh,
if you want.
go right ahead then.
All
Absolutely.
right. So my goal today is to make you safer outdoors. There are a lot of health benefits being around outside, running around, you know, bonding with nature, but there's some things you have to look out for. One of the big ones is poison ivy, which is found all across North America. So how this presentation is going to work, just an overview of it. First, we'll briefly introduce who am I and why should you even bother listening to me. Hopefully you'll feel my credentials make it worthwhile. But then we're going to go over the identification of poison ivy, a little bit about the chemistry of it, because it actually really is a fascinating way it acts. And then the actual mode of action, the mechanism by which it causes the irritation.
Mm-hmm.
Then we want to cover, of course, prevention and treatment. And then if time, there's a quick review just to recover everything quickly, because usually you have to hear things more than once.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So who am I? So Merryweather is actually a nickname. My real name is Mark Vorderbruggen, PhD. I am a chemist. I have a master's degree in medicinal chemistry, a PhD in physical organic chemistry. So I don't make the molecules. I figure out which molecules man or God has made and find the appropriate use for them. I'm also an herbalist. I am the medicine man for Medicine Man Plant Co. There will be a coupon code at the end here for you for that. I am an author, Idiot's Guide Foraging. I also have a website, foragingtexas.com. Though, even though it says Texas in the title, it actually covers pretty much all of North America. Husband, father, post homeschooler. My kids have gotten that point where they're no longer homeschooled.
Mm.
And jumping in, the coupon code for Medicine Man Plant Co is poison ivy, no spaces, capital letters.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So let's jump right into identification. So I'm going to go through the different structures of the poison ivy and help you, teach you what you need to be looking at for each of these, starting with the leaves, because you hear leaves of three, let it be. So the botanical term for this is trifoliate. So this is actually one leaf with three leaflets. So trifoliate compound leaf, if you really want to be technical. The center leaf of the three leaflets is symmetrical. So it looks pretty much the same on either side of this vein. So there might be a little difference, but the space on either side is pretty much equal. It is symmetrical. So it's a mirror image or really close to being a mirror image across the center vein there.
Mm-hmm.
The side leaves are asymmetrical. So if you look at the center vein, you'll see there is a thin side and a thick side. So the side leaves are no longer symmetrical, they are asymmetrical. The thin side will be towards the central symmetrical leaflet, and the thick side will be away. To make it even easier, sometimes poison ivy will grow these thumbs on the leaf. So if you think of these side leaves as kind of mitten shaped, the thumb will be away from the center symmetrical leaflet.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
see it.
yep. To me, it kind of looks like an angel, kind of an angel with a bad attitude, but we need those too sometimes.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, some more structural features about the leaves. In this case, we're going to look at how are they attached to the vine itself, because that's another structural feature.
Mm-hmm.
So the leaves of poison ivy, they alternate along the vine. So what this means, so we already talked about it's a compound trifoliate leaf. They are attached to the main stem in a zigzagging fashion. They won't be directly opposite each other. They'll be zigzagging up the stem. Pretty clear there. So think
Yeah.
zigzag.
Mm-hmm.
There it is, zigzag. Okay. Another thing are the colors. So we normally in the summer we think green leaves. Yep, green leaves during the summer. But then in the fall they'll turn red or gold. And sometimes they'll turn gold and then red, or sometimes red then gold. It's kind of amusing. Here in Houston, there is a very, very ritzy neighborhood called Red Vine. The builders named it after these beautiful red vines as they saw growing all over it when they first started building the houses. And yeah, this neighborhood is loaded with poison ivy.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's quite attractive in the fall. It's quite pretty.
Yeah.
So green, then gold, then red, and then none. So in the wintertime, you will just have the bare stems attached to the trees or whatever thing. And the saying here is hairy is scary. If you see a hairy vine clinging to a tree or a wall or something like that by all these little hairs, you probably got poison ivy. So hairy, lots of small, short, stiff hairs. Clingy. So hairy and clingy. Clinging to like I said, the wall or the tree. These are not Tarzan vines. You can't swing from these vines. They like to glom on to some sort of structure and grow up those. Okay, the flowers. If a lot of people have never really even considered poison ivy flowers because they're just looking at the leaves and going, I don't want to get close enough to see the flowers. The flowers are actually very tiny. They grow on a stalk. So this brown here is one of the leaf stalks. So leaf here, so it'll end in the 3. And then also coming from that juncture will be another stalk. And here again, the flowers will be alternating along the stalk. If you were to look very closely, you would see they have 5 petals. The number of petals is relatively important. It is a very good structural feature for identifying plants. What is the flower like? And the petals themselves will have kind of a green yellow sort of color. What is it? The braca flower, where they cross broccoli and cauliflower, if you know that one. And I feel the same way about braca flower as I feel about poison ivy as far as. But yeah, it's just kind of a pale green yellow flower. The petals point backwards. So like on this one, maybe you can see that the petals kind of point back, almost like a grass skirt, if you will. And then they have the orange pistils, the center part coming out, kind of a gold orange. I'm going to call it orange. I'm a guy. We only see 7 colors. So it's orange to me. So now getting this close, you probably have to push the leaves aside, which you don't want to do, but you might see them. Okay, the berries. Right now in the Houston area, we are about halfway through the berry season. So right now the berries are very green. Each flower turns into a berry. So the berries are arranged in the same way. So 1 berry per flower. They start out green when young, but then they turn white when they mature. And at this point, I still don't have a good picture of the white berries. So just imagine these now turning white. And that's what you're going to have. So you got the trifoliate leaves with the center symmetric, the side thumbs, a hairy stem, and these clusters of green berries.
Interesting. Does anything actually eat those berries?
Yeah, actually a lot of things do. In fact, the only real creature that is affected by poison ivy is humans. So birds love them, and squirrels and opossums down here, and everything else can eat the poison ivy. There is a grasshopper down here that actually survives pretty much solely on poison ivy.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so the structure, the irritating compound is this big caterpillarly looking molecule called uracil. And I always pronounce that like uracil. And so each of the gray dots, so the gray dots are carbons, The white dots are oxygen. Sorry, the red dots are oxygen and the white dots are hydrogens. So you have this ring structure and then this long carbon chain. So we call a diphenyl ring. The di part comes from the two hydroxy groups, the oxygen and hydrogen group. So it has two, or diphenyl ring, and then a 15 carbon chain. So it has 15 of these carbons latched together with a series of single bonds and occasionally double bonds connecting them together. We don't have to go deep into the chemistry, but I thought I'd throw it out there. But if you know anything about chemistry, looking at this, it's a big, long molecule with lots of carbons. It is very greasy, very oily. And if you think like dissolves like, water does nothing to this. It will not dissolve into water. It will not be removed by water. So it is a greasy, oily sort of molecule. Oily.
Oily.
So not soluble in water. So what does this mean? Well, it means several things when we get down to prevention. But, in nature, it can last 5 years.
Oh.
So even after the plant dies, after the poison ivy dies, the bits and pieces of the plant can remain dangerous for up to 5 years.
Wow.
And do I have it on here? I think I have it on here. Yes. It takes 1 nanogram of this material to cause a reaction in people. That is a billionth of a gram. That is a very, 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 very small amount. But it doesn't take much to trigger the reaction. So let's talk about what it is doing. Its mode of action is actually an allergic reaction. You may hear people that say they don't react with poison ivy. That means they do not have an allergy to poison ivy. This also means that each time they go and play and show off how resistant to poison ivy they are rolling the dice, because this allergic reaction can occur anytime you come in contact with poison ivy. So you may be no allergic reaction, no allergic reaction, no allergic reaction, and then bang, you get an allergic reaction. So that urushiol, what it does is it penetrates the skin, either through openings or cuts in the skin, or through sweat glands, or through hair follicles, and gets down inside and binds, through the hair follicles, breaks in the skin. It binds to the cell surface proteins. So every cell in your body has proteins on the surface. And one of the purposes of these proteins is to tell your immune system that that cell is a friend. It is part of you. Don't kill it. But then that urushiol, it comes and it wraps around and it binds to these surface proteins. So now when your immune system is going around checking things out, that cell is disguised. The immune system no longer recognizes it. And so the immune system starts attacking it. Now, if you got just a little bit of the urushiol on you, what's called the innate immune system, the non-specific immune system, will do the killing. But once the innate system sees that, or no longer recognizes a cell in your body, it injects poison into it and kills that cell. The problem that occurs is if it decides there's a whole bunch of cells that are causing problems, your body will create the white blood cells that will specifically target these cells that have the urushiol, covered or disguised proteins. And now your whole immune system starts attacking it. So every time in the future, when you come in contact with, at the very least, 1 nanogram, and usually you become in contact with a lot more if you're messing around the poison ivy, a bunch of the cells get that disguise on them, and your immune system goes nuts and starts killing all them, which is what leads to the blistering, the itching, and these symptoms can last up to 3 weeks. It takes a while for the urushiol to get expelled or degraded inside your body. and the reactions to finish up. So it can be really ugly, really painful. A few issues. Well, we'll get into it in the prevention. So, okay. So how do you avoid getting the poison ivy, the urushiol on you? So you want to avoid touching the plant. So if you see trees wrapped around with these hairy stems in the winter, don't touch them. The leaves, where I talked about how to identify those, just keep an eye out while you're outside trying to spot this plant. After a while, you get really good at spotting it, because it's like down here again, down in Texas, spotting rattlesnakes and copperheads. It's just a survival technique you learn when you're out in the woods. So you start learning how to identify the poison ivy. But also keep in mind that the urushiol oil, it can cling to your clothing. So even if you like brush against it with your shirt sleeve or something, then when you're taking your jacket or whatever, you can get the urushiol on you that way. Socks and pants legs are a very common way, because the poison ivy can also creep around the underbrush, and you don't even realize at first that you're walking through it. But your shoes and your socks and your pants legs. Another thing is pets. If you're out in the wild with your dog or your llama or whatever pet you happen to have, the poison ivy is not going to affect them, but the oils can gather on their fur or their feathers. You're out with your pet chicken, whatever. And then when you, yep, and then when you pet your pet, suddenly you got the urushiol oil on you.
Right.
One of the worst ways, though, is through the smoke. If you are burning, have a campfire going on where you are burning some tree branches or tree stumps or trunks that have the vine on it, the compounds will volatilize and you will breathe them in. And then you end up with poison ivy of the lungs and bronchial tubes and sinuses and stuff like that.
Yikes.
Very unpleasant. Very dangerous. Yes. Yeah. So you always want to make sure the firewood that you're using doesn't have any signs of poison ivy on it, because a campfire is a wonderful way to spend an evening, just hanging out with your friends and caveman TV. But check it for poison ivy so you don't end up with poison ivy of the lungs.
Right.
All right. Prevention. Let's say you think you got some on you. You do have a short amount of time to try and clean it off. And when I say short amount of time, I actually mean like 2 to 3 hours. We already talked that the molecule is long and greasy, so most regular soaps will not remove it. If you are in an area where there's a lot of poison ivy, or you think you're going to encounter poison ivy, there is a special cream. I get no kickback, but this is one of the best. The Technu, it is specifically designed to remove the urushiol oil from your skin, like that. So it's chemically perfect for dissolving it. If you don't want to get that, go to like an auto parts store and buy some of the mechanics soaps there that are specifically designed for removing automotive grease and engine grease, because that's what you need. So you need like Gojo, Workman's Friend, something like that is designed for removing grease. And then you want to scrub. You want to pretend you are a doctor going into surgery. So you want to scrub a good 4 or 5 minutes with it and just try and get everything off. Even 2 or 3 repeats, washings, but go at least 3 minutes to try and get everything off.
Gotcha.
All right, let's say you failed. What do you do? How do you treat it? Well, we already talked that it is an allergic reaction. So your basic anti-allergy medicines will go a long ways towards helping you with the attack. So things like the Benadryl and the Claritin, the antihistamine type over-the-counter type drugs. You also, if it's really bad, your primary care physician, he or she may suggest a cortisol shot, because the cortisol is an anti-inflammatory, but even the over-the-counter cortisone creams will help reduce some of the swelling and the irritation, and help give you some soothing relief, if you will. And if nothing else, a cold compress, because the inflammation, what's going on in that point is the body is flooding that area with blood and heating it up, because at that point it still doesn't know if there's a bacteria or what. So it heats up the area of the skin to try and kill the bacteria. And so a cold compress will help relieve some of the symptoms of that. Then finally, in regards to the blisters, the wet weeping blisters and the itchiness, you want to dry those out. So a calamine lotion after you've applied the cortisone cream and the cold compress to soothe it and remove some of the itch. You follow up with a calamine lotion. Long history of using dry oatmeal as a drying agent. You pack that on there and it will absorb some of the moisture and help soothe it there, or even sprinkling baking soda on your skin. So you want to, some sort of antihistamine, anti-allergy material, an anti-inflammatory, and then drying. Okay. Wow, we went through this really fast, actually. Short attention span theater, not a problem. Okay, so going back to reviewing the identification, leaves of 3. The center leaf is symmetrical, not the best picture for that. The side leaves are asymmetrical. You can see that better. So, the center leaf, it's a mirror image on either side of that center vein, but the side leaves are going to be asymmetrical with a thin side towards the center leaf or leaflet and a thick side, often with thumbs pointing away, and then alternating down the vine. And it's kind of hard to see here, but there are the hairs growing off the vine too. So identification, that really is the key. You want to see it before it gets you.
Right.
Okay. So the chemistry of the urushiol, and what this does, this long, greasy, oily molecule, it slides into your body through the hair follicles, the sweat glands, and any sort of open wounds, and starts wrapping around the proteins inside your body. Like I said, oily, not soluble in water, 5-year lifespan. I guess those are the key things there that I should be mentioning. And then it only takes 1 nanogram to actually trigger a reaction, which is an extremely small amount. Okay, mode of action. It is an allergic reaction. It is the worst set of hives you will ever get. Oops, let me go back, because the body is actively killing your own cells. It now sees your cells as an alien invader, and its purpose then, the immune system, is to kill the invaders. So that's what's happening here. It's basically popping your own cells that then causes, them to dissolve into this watery mess. The outer surface of the blister is the dead skin on the surface, just kind of holding it together. So the dead skin, the immune system doesn't do it that. It's doing the stuff down inside the skin where the urushiol got in there and triggered this immune reaction. Okay, so reviewing the prevention, main thing is avoid contact. It may look like I'm touching this leaf. My hand is actually about 1/4 inch below it. And you want to use some sort of degreasing soap is the key thing there. You want to use, like I said, an automotive mechanic, car grease, engine grease sort of removing soap, not just even Dawn dishwashing detergent really doesn't do much. You really need something designed for heavy duty greases.
Is that specific with an exfoliant in it, or is it chemically structured to remove it?
The main thing is the chemical structure. The adding an exfoliant definitely helps.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, and then treatment. Like I said, it's an allergic reaction, so you need some sort of anti-allergy, antihistamine to kind of soothe the skin, and anti-inflammatory to help with the redness and itching, and then something to dry the weeping blisters to also help with the itching, and also to help prevent it from spreading. So Okay. Wow. We went through that really fast.
No worries. It was a
So
good.
yeah. So again, just my name, Dr. Mark Merriweather Vorderbruggen, PhD. My websites are theforageintexas.com and then medicinemanplantco.com. I have a YouTube channel with over 100 hours of plant videos, mainly edible and medicinal plants and other useful information like that. On Facebook, I got the Foraging Texas website, or Foraging Texas on Facebook, and then Instagram Merryweather Forager.
Nice.
So yeah, and oops, let me just stop sharing here.
Okay.
Okay, and then just recap the coupon code. If you go to Medicine Man Plant Co., the coupon code is Poison Ivy. One word, no spaces, all capitals, and it saves you 10% on any of the purchases. I will say, if you are in the throes of poison ivy, you do
Hmm.
not want to take the immune pill because that actually makes the immune system
Ah,
even more powerful. And
yeah.
you'll get even more blisters and reactions. And
Good.
let me just throw one other little tip out there for those who think, I am not resistant to poison ivy. I mentioned at the beginning that
Hmm.
just because you aren't now doesn't mean you won't develop an allergic reaction to it. And one thing, if you are out in the woods with a cold or some sort of sickness already, your body is looking for enemies. So your immune system is already kind of hyper vigilant.
Hmm.
And so then if you come in contact with poison ivy at that time, it's even more likely for you to develop the poison ivy reaction. So as good as it is to be outside when you're sick, getting the vitamin D and the fresh air and so forth, you still want to be even more vigilant in looking for the poison ivy and not getting
Yeah,
triggered by it.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Is it Merriweather? Do you like to go by Dr. Merriweather?
I find Merryweather, it's fine. So, Dr. Mark Vorderbruggen is hard to say and somewhat pretentious. So, I was given the nickname Merryweather decades ago for my propensity to keep stopping the group and looking at plants.
Hmm.
And so I just go with that.
Yeah, so thank you for that presentation. That was really useful information. I think most people probably don't have a grasp of those basics of poison ivy. So that is really good information to be able to pass along. Um, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your nature walks that you do.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go
So, if you go to the Foraging Texas website, there's a tab for upcoming classes.
ahead.
So, I teach all around Texas. I also teach up in Minnesota, where I'm originally from. My parents are up there, so occasionally I'll have classes up there. And more recently, several groups have been trying to get me to come up into Canada, but at this time the border is still closed. But
Mm.
yeah, the plant walks are actually out in the wild looking at the plants. They usually go 4 hours, unless no one reminds me that the class ends at a particular time, because then I just keep going. I did one Saturday up in Dallas. It was supposed to be 4 hours. We ended up going 5.5 hours, just
Mm.
because there are so many plants. And if you want to drop out before then, that's perfectly okay. Then also, I do a number of online Zoom presentations like this for different groups. A lot of gardening groups will have me talk about the edible weeds that they are throwing out, and they're thinking, you should probably be eating these. So, yeah, I cover both the edible and medicinal or otherwise useful plants and mushrooms when
Oh,
when I'm out.
nice. Yeah, I'd love to do a whole show just on mushrooms.
Ooh,
That's a fascinating topic to me.
there's some pretty awesome ones out there. Very, very tasty. There's some good beginner mushrooms out there.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a hobby of foraging you really want to be careful with, I imagine, if you're going to be eating them, because it's not just
Yeah.
a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the basic rule of thumb with a plant, you want to identify 5 structural features, and with mushrooms, like 9 or 10.
Oh,
So most
wow.
people don't realize there are 9 or 10 structural features on a mushroom. There are, and you got
Yeah,
to
yeah.
look at all of them.
Hmm.
So,
Well, it's a good information to know. So before we wrap up, I kind of want to do a quick little rapid fire questionnaire with
okay,
you.
bring it on.
Um, yeah. So, what are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand?
So let's see. War and Remembrance by Herman Wauk, Wauk. He's more famous for his book, The Winds of War, which was basically what was going on around the world leading up to, well, the Winds of War ends with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And then the War in Remembrance starts, right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and goes all the way through victory in Europe and victory in Japan, including recapping like what occurred in the death camps, the German death camps for the Jews and things like that. So it's a historical fiction. It taps a lot of real historical figures and things like that. But the key people are fictitious. But it's considered to be one of the best series for really learning about World War II. So,
really interesting, and it's fiction too. I find historical fiction fascinating. It's one of my favorites as well. So, next question: what is the most useful tool that you use?
Pocket knife.
Nice.
I always have some sort of pocket knife with me, because, and if you think about it, our first tool was like a dull rock or a stick. Our second tool was a knife. And so, yeah, constantly there's always something that needs to be cut, threads or coupons or cheesecake or whatever. So it kills me going flying nowadays because I can't have a pocket knife in my pocket.
Yeah.
And when it comes to foraging, one of the things you want to do is respect the plant. You want to do as minimum damage to the plant while you're harvesting. So instead of just tearing it off and putting a big tear through the plant, you want to just do a little cut through it. So yeah,
right. What are the top 3 songs on your favorite playlist?
Ooh, okay. So I am 53 years old. I can't really give you I can probably give you a top 3. So first would be Last Train to Transcendental by the KLF, which was an English kind of trance music. The second would be the entire KLF album Chill Out, because it is one long song that goes about an hour. And then the third would probably be the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin, aka the Thor song from, I guess, Thor Ragnarok.
Nice. So next question, what skills did you make sure you have teenage daughters, right?
Correct.
What skills did you make sure your teenage daughters knew?
How to take care of the automobiles was a big one. How to change a tire, how to change a headlight, how to check the oil, how to jump a car, how to safely use the jumper cables, all those sort of things. So, to minimize the risk of them getting stranded. That being said, they still both have AAA. So, but we want them to have that ability. And then the other, well, I'd say there are 3. So the car stuff, cooking, the ability to cook things from scratch, and the ability to, basically plan out a week's worth of food, do the shopping and get it, and then eat the food they make. So they were responsible for making their own school lunches, from the point of figuring out what they were going to have, going to the grocery store, getting the stuff, and preparing the foods, and then taking care of their own laundry. That was my wife's idea. Yeah, because when the girls were young, they'd go through like 3-4 outfits a day when they're like 6. And the wife said, "You know what? Okay, you can change the clothes as much as you want, but you got to do your own laundry." So from about the age 6, they've been doing their own laundry, and it minimized the amount of laundry that we had to do then.
I am there with you.
So,
I've got 4 of them, and they're already on that path.
The goal of the parent is to teach their kids to survive without the parent.
Absolutely.
And so automotive, so you don't get stranded, food, so you don't starve, and clothing, so you don't stink. And there you go.
Nice. So last question, if you could go back and give yourself any advice as a teenager, or learn something over as a teen that helped you later in life, what would it be? What would you say?
Ooh, there are 2 either start teaching foraging sooner
Mhm.
or don't sell the apple stock at $100.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I could have retired. I was a big fan of Apple, and I bought a bunch when it was $12, and then it split. And finally, I got up to $100 a share, and I thought it's not going any higher than this.
Mm.
Boy, was I wrong.
Oh, that's some good advice there.
Uh,
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on today. It's been a pleasure.
no,
Um,
thank you for having me.
absolutely. I will wrap it up then.
All right.